Welcome. This is quite a crowd. I'm Sharon Foster. I'm chair of the Liquor Board. And first I want to say that what I've been saying in the other three public forums that we've had, when I look out across the audience, I say, wow. And the big interest for me was to see if we would have this much interest on east of the Cascades as we did west of the Cascades. I'm very pleased to see all of you. To my right is Ruth Ann Carose, who is a board member, and Ruth Ann is from Seattle. And to my left is Chris Marr, who many of you may know, was a senator representing this area. So the three of us comprise the Liquor Control Board. And you'll hear from Ruth Ann and Chris in a moment. But I would also like to introduce at least three people down here in front. Don't know what that was, but he didn't need a microphone, I guess, did he? Pat Kohler is our agency director, who does the day-to-day stuff at our agency, and Rick Garza is our deputy director. And the man that helped put all this together, and all of them, who has just been a great help to all of us, is Brian Smith, and he's been the one making sure that we do everything right. Just a couple housekeeping things. That this is an open forum, unlike a public hearing. An open forum is not something we normally do. We've done it with a couple of other things, but that we want to hear from you. So we're in the listening mode, where when it's a public hearing, that means we've already have proposed rules in front of us and in front of you, and we ask you to respond on the proposed rules. In this instance, we're asking you to tell us what you think, what you want, and so it will help us in the rulemaking proposals that come to us in a couple of months. Initiative 502 passed by over 55% of the voters of the state of Washington. And if there's going to be any change in that law in the next 2 years, it takes a 2/3 vote of the legislature to do that. So I want you to know that it just can't be changed willy-nilly with a majority vote for the next 2 years. We did not write it. We do believe it was written as well as probably most any initiative can be written. There's still a lot of little glitches in it that need to be smoothed out. We will do our best as we can in the rulemaking, but remember that we did not write it. We cannot change it. I have to put my glasses on to see my notes. We have no impact on current federal law. We do not have impact on banking laws. Medical marijuana is not under the purview of the Liquor Control Board. It is with the Department of Health. We do not have any jurisdiction on the growing of hemp. So please remember that. Not that we don't want you to talk about those things. Just remember, those are things that we do not have purview over. We're here to listen. We are recording all the proceedings. They'll be on our website. Again, it's unlike a public hearing where we hear from stakeholders on whether they agree with the proposed rules or not. Again, we are here to listen. I would ask you to make your comments as brief as possible. We have a lot of people signed up. I would ask you if you could please keep your comments to 2 minutes. I'll try to keep track, and if you're over that, I will probably give you a little notice that I'd like you to wrap up. And if you have more to say or want us to hear more, please go to our website and at the Liquor Control Board. We have a link there for 502. Go to that. send us comments. Write a comment, send it in the comment box that's out in the lobby, and we will listen to everybody. We've been trying to listen to everybody. We had about 500 people in Seattle, 300 people in Olympia, and about 400 people in Vancouver. And looking at this audience, my guess is we're well over 450 here, so pretty darn good crowd. I'm going to ask Ruth Ann and Pat to each say something. Ruth Ann and Chris to each say something. And then we're going to go to Pat Kohler, our agency director, who's going to do a short PowerPoint that'll probably give you the agenda and a little bit more information before we start our public comment. So thank you all for coming.
So I'm the third board member, Ruth Ann Carosa, from Seattle. My background is based in public policy before serving as a liquor and now a marijuana regulator. As Chairwoman Foster has expressed, we have an unprecedented task of creating a regulatory system to safely regulate marijuana. It's more far-sweeping than any legalization of marijuana in history, with a wide array of complexities to address, from issues in areas of consumer demand, enforcement, licensing, retailing, product safety, and these forums are going to inform us of perspectives from stakeholders and citizens to consider as we create rules to implement this initiative. So thanks for being here today.
Hi, I'm Chris Marr, another board member. It's good to be back in town here, and thanks for the nice day today. Sharon was repeating a comment she made in Seattle. What I said in Seattle was, who would have thought when I was watching Cream 40-something years ago at the Fillmore that it would come to this? But this is very unusual for us. Normally, rulemaking in an agency like the Liquor Control Board is very formal, and it's really designed to let you comment after we've already pretty much written the rules. We decided to do this a little differently, and I will give credit to John Snyder, who I don't think is here, but Councilman Snyder actually called me relatively early and said, there's a lot of questions out there, and he came up with the idea of, can you engage early? And in talking to the board, I think we all felt that was a good idea. This is an initiative of the people, and I think people have a lot of ownership in it, and they need to feel like they were heard before the process really got too far underway, because this is unique. We're the first, if you think about it, we're the first in the world to have a fully legalized system. In other countries, there's tolerance, but there actually is not a state sanctioned system of recreational marijuana. So you're part of that process, and in the coming months, as Pat will talk about, you have the opportunity to continue to be involved, and I certainly would encourage those of you that aren't on our listserv or our email list to do that. So the other thing, I'll just echo what Sharon said, is this is government by initiative, so it's not perfect, and there will be things you don't like. In fact, some of you will probably acknowledge that you didn't vote for the initiative because you wanted it to look different. Well, we have what we have, and I do think it's important, though, that we not try to edit your comments, because even though there aren't things we can change now, there are things we can look down the road at changing through the legislature. And I will tell you, the comments you make are part of the record, and they are available to folks like legislators that want to take the time to take a look at what you're thinking. So I appreciate all of you being here today. This is democracy at its best, and really proud of the fact that the turnout here, I think, will come close to eclipsing Seattle. So thanks again for being here.
Thank you. And here comes Pat, and she'll be up here for, let's take about 5 minutes, Pat?
Good evening, everybody. How you guys doing? Good? Thanks for being here. So this is our fourth forum across the state, and we still have several more, but the first one in Eastern Washington. So we've had a couple of very busy days. We've met with some of the newspapers, did editorial boards, and with local law enforcement, prevention, and local governments today. So busy couple of days. So I'm going to cover the agenda. Tonight, you've heard the board talk about the differences between the laws and the rules, and with the initiative process, the board does not have say on how the law is written, but we have the responsibility to carry out the laws as directed by the voters of the state. I'm going to summarize what the key responsibilities in implementing I-502 for the agency are and give you an overview of that today. Talk about the timelines, and then we'll turn it over to all of you that are interested in giving comments on your perspective as the board considers rulemaking and implementing I-502. So this slide here describes the differences between the laws and the rules. And just to emphasize, again, any changes to the law and the way that it's written takes a 2/3 vote by the legislature in order to make changes. And some of those changes, some of those issues that we've heard at other public forums would be things like the 1,000-foot rule. That's written in law, so we can't make any changes to that unless the legislature made those changes with 2/3 vote. Other examples that we've heard at the forums would be tax issues. The 25% excise tax is written into the law, so the board doesn't have any ability to make changes, at least in the short term. I think long term it gives us some flexibility. And then a good example, last example I'll give is the 5 nanogram in the DUI laws. That's built into the laws, so the board doesn't have the ability to change that because it was what was passed by law. So what we're trying to achieve in implementing I-502 is a strictly controlled and regulated cannabis market. And we have 3 basic roles. First, we're trying to create a 3-tier regulatory system for cannabis. And I think one of the advantages that we bring to the table is that we have created a 3-tier system for liquor. And even though liquor and cannabis are different, the initiative modeled the system after a 3-tier system. The other thing so in this 3-tier system, we have to create licenses. We have to create a producer license, a process license, and a retail license. Now, a producer and a processor can be the same person, but you can't be all 3 tiers. So there's that separation of the tiers similar to what exists with liquor. And then we have a responsibility to enforce the laws and rules pertaining to the licensees. Now, local law enforcement and the state patrol have responsibility over DUIs, DUI provisions, and other parts of the law. Our law enforcement pertains specifically to the licensees and how if they're following the rules that we set up in implementing the new law. And then finally, we have the responsibility for collecting and distributing taxes and fees. So the 25% excise tax actually comes into the board, and there's a separate marijuana fund that's been set up that has a distribution of funds that goes to important important programs within government. I think another advantage that we have is that we have gone through implementation of I-1183, which was privatization of liquor, and that was another initiative. Like Chris said, it wasn't written perfect, but we had to implement that in less than 6 months to shut down $1 billion retail operation, and so actually this gives us a little bit longer time period. What the law says is that we actually don't have to have the rules in place until December of 2013. So it actually gives us until that time period in December to have rules established. But one of the things that we took into consideration is that it's legal to possess marijuana now. You can actually possess 1 ounce of marijuana, and then there's 16 ounces of marijuana infused and 72 ounces in liquid form. And so you can possess it, but there's no retail place to buy it at this point. And so we recognized that there was a need to have a retail market. And also the Office of Financial Management built their fiscal impact statement so that revenues would start coming in January of 2014, and sales would actually start in December of 2013. So when we built this timeline, we built it with that date of retail sales beginning in December, and we worked backwards. One of the things that the board will evaluate as we look at this timeline, based on all the open forums across the state, is whether or not there needs to be any modifications to this timeline based on the input from the public. So the law became effective December 6th. We actually have gone out on January 17th, and we've asked for a request for proposal to get some subject matter expertise in the agency on marijuana, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. We're doing these public forums. They actually are going to go a little bit into March because we scheduled one in the Bremerton area and also in the Tacoma area. So we'll be doing some more forums across the state. The two key dates there, mid-April is when, and mid-June is when the rulemaking, you're actually going to see draft rules come out. And that'll also have another, like I think Sharon said, it'll have another public hearing process in which you can actually comment on the draft rules. Mid-August is probably one of the more significant milestones. That's when the producers will have their license and can legally start growing marijuana under this recreational use in I-502. And then December 1st would be the effective date of the processors and retailers. So as we evaluated even before the initiative passed, we saw polling indicating that this was going to pass. So we structured ourselves to look at what are all the issues that we need to look at as we consider implementation of this new law. And so we set up 11 different teams in the agency to consider all the operational issues, the organizational structure, staffing, system changes. And so we've set ourselves up to be ready to implement this new law. There's been discussion about different partners that we have, and the law actually spells out different people we're responsible to coordinate with. Of course, we're coordinating with our governor's office and the Office of Financial Management in implementation of the law. But the Attorney General's office plays a key role in an initiative process. It's not always clear, and so we use the AG to help us make sure we're legally interpreting the law as written. Department of Agriculture has a really key role in helping us in the law. There's areas of setting up a testing and quality infrastructure. There's labeling and packaging requirements. You have to actually label and package how much THC is in the packages, and there's also consumer protection things in there around is the product safe? What about mold issues and fertilizers and pesticides and things like that? So that's all covered in that law to have the board consider those issues. The State Patrol probably is the other key agency in implementation of this. They're responsible for the DUI standards and setting up how to go about addressing those issues. Revenue, the Department of Revenue has a taxing responsibility. Although we collect the excise tax, there is B&O tax and sales tax that's included in this, so they'll help us with that. Department of Health actually gets a significant amount of money. I think it's $20 million a year, and their job is education around marijuana. How to use the product safely, underage issues around education. And so they'll have some money to spend towards making sure that people are properly using it and it doesn't get in the hands of minors. And then the Department of Social and Health Services plays a prevention role, and so they get some funding in this process as well. So this is a summary of the request for proposal, and the board went ahead with the request for proposal because we needed we felt we needed expertise in marijuana. We wanted to get some expertise in how it's grown, what kinds of considerations should we give to infused products, and so we've looked at that. Quality, I talked about the quality standards and testing. We want to make sure we set up the right infrastructure and that there's consistent testing so that the consumer gets a safe product. Product usage and consumption is a key area. The fiscal impact made an assumption on a consumption rate, and what we've heard is either that's too high or too low. And so we want to use a third party to help us validate those consumption figures. And that'll be the basis for helping us determine how many retail outlets, how many producers, how much should be produced to service the state of Washington. And one of the concerns I think the federal government has is around diversion. So we want to give some confidence as we implement this regulatory system that will try to tightly regulate to ensure diversion doesn't happen. And then the last area is around product regulations. Those are the rules. And so we'll use the technical expertise of the consultants to help in areas that we think are more complex that we'd like to seek some additional advice. The next area is the public outreach. Definitely the forums are a way for us to reach out to the public. But we have an I-502 website. There's an icon on the Liquor Board website that has the 502 icon. If you're not on the listserv right now, that's a great way. If you sign up, you'll automatically get information about what we're doing. And we already have today over 3,000 subscribers. We're doing webinars with city and local governments. We'll do the public hearings on the rules, and we've been doing editorial boards with all the major newspapers, as well as establishing a dialogue with the state of Colorado, who has pretty much a similar time frame for implementation of recreational marijuana as well. And so I think we can both gain from each other's insight as we implement the marijuana recreational use. If you're not comfortable coming up and speaking in front of the public, there are many other ways that you can provide public comment. You can send the public comment box that Cindy has in the back is one way. But throughout the process, you can comment in writing on rulemaking rather than having to come to a public forum or to come to a hearing. This is the remaining public forums that are going on throughout the state. And so you can see up there, we'll conclude on March 7th. So that concludes my comments, and we'll turn it over back to the board to start taking public testimony.
Thank you, Pat.